Welcome to Comedians After Hours with your hosts Willis and Vere.
Hello, I'm Adam Willis.
I'm George Vere.
And I'm Ian.
And tonight's guest on Comedians After Hours is Kieran Hodgson.
Tonight's episode is recorded live at the Bill Murray. It's the first of two recorded live at the Bill Murray. And unfortunately, there are a few technical issues in this one with Ian's microphone. You can't hear him at points and it crackles a little bit, but that is not our fault.
And I don't want to be heard.
Very short musical sting there. Thank you.
Very short. Would you like a longer one?
No, I don't want to be greedy.
Are you sure?
Sure.
All right.
Maybe come the end.
Yeah.
Just if you can think of something a bit more, it's got a bit more weight to it. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Ian, can you remember to talk into the mic as well? We've talked about this before.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi. Evening.
Good to have you here.
Sorry, was I meant to ask?
Awkward already.
It seems that way.
No, I felt the need to get into a sort of formal interview situation, but
Okay.
I couldn't avoid the pleasantries straight off the bat.
That's fine.
We'll start the pleasantries then.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm all right, except as I said to you earlier on, I got robbed this evening in a park. Which was a little odd. I made a rod for my own back. I walked through this park after dark in London, and I've done it tons and tons of times before, and nothing's ever happened. And I didn't want to be that guy. I grew up in the early 2000s, and I was told a lot by Michael Moore about the climate of fear. And how we really, we were being told to be afraid of things all the time. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to walk through the park after dark in London. That's going to be fine. Anyway, I got robbed. And it was really weird because up ahead in the distance, I saw a gang of suspicious-looking people.
Oh, no.
And I thought, a gang of suspicious-looking people.
What made them look suspicious?
They were all wearing what I can describe as sports gear, hanging around not doing anything in a park after dark. And they were not near any tennis courts or five-a-side football pitches or anything like that, So they were just sort of milling around up there. And I thought, let's just give them a wide berth. There's an alternative path over this grass. I'll use that path and go around them, much like I would do, a herd of bulls in a field.
Yeah.
And so I snuck off across the path. But then I suspect that one of them saw me sneaking off. So what they did was they looped round the top.
Oh, no.
So I came up on this path, and all of a sudden, there they are. And so I thought, right, I'm not going to suspect. I'm not going to suspect this. I'm going to give these people the benefit of the doubt. They may be just a bunch of friends on the way home.
You're saying that now. You gave them a wide berth.
Hey, a wide berth is very different from turning around and running away from someone. So I thought, okay, well, we're in this now, and I would be too embarrassed to turn around and run away. So I thought I'll just walk straight up, and I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. And as my line of defense, I will get my phone out and be texting, so they'll think, we better not mess with this guy.
He's
He
busy.
might text Cressida Dick and get her down here. So anyway, my text ruse didn't work. The guy came up and said, "What time is it?" And as soon as he said it, I was like, we both know what's happening here.
We know what's
Why
happening.
are we entertaining?
Fighting time.
But let's entertain this fiction. So I said, it's 6:20. And then he said, let's have a look, as if he wasn't sure about the time. He thought I was lying. So I showed him my phone, and my phone is not a smartphone. It's like I'm one of those knobheads who it's like, I'm not gonna have a smartphone. So it was just like a Nokia that you could get for like £10. And I showed it to him, and he was like, yeah, and he put his hand on it. I was like, don't take my phone. At which point it was very much like "and scene" on the clock thing. So he and then I said, please can I have my phone back? And he said, don't talk to me like that, which was bold. And so I said, please give me my phone. And then I said, like, very much, okay, we're into the robbing scenario now. Yeah. It's worthless. I thought I can appeal to his reason. This is like a Nokia phone that is deliberately like low tech. It has Snake on it. That's it. It doesn't have, I'm a Luddite, and so I have this Luddite phone, and I was like, it's worthless. It's worth nothing to you. You want, you're a street from the kid. You're a kid from the streets, and or a street from the kids. And you want a better life, and I understand that. And you want a phone that has all sorts of great apps and stuff. But this isn't the phone for you. You don't need this. This didn't wash. And then his colleagues weighed in, and one of them said, "What have you got in your pockets?" And I said, "Okay, well, here's my wallet. It has a £5 in it, and I was happy to part with the £5, just money." Handed that over. Wasn't
Showing
enough.
off. Wealthy.
Yeah, I know. I got a £5 to save my skin. Gave the £5 over, but no, that wasn't enough. So then it was. Right. This is the best bit. I'd heard about people getting robbed before, and I thought the one thing that these guys cannot get hold of is my bank card. So while I was handing over the wallet, a little bit of sleight of hand, slide out the debit card, put it in the back pocket while they're not noticing. So they didn't get that. They took my keys, and they also took my biography of 1960s Foreign Secretary George Brown. And they said, "What's this?" And I said, "It's a book about." I won't go into it.
Really
and
good.
then they got my wallet, and my wallet, right. So I get complaints from my husband about this all the time. But my wallet is just like this big ball of crap that I carry around. No, but it's become a ball. Because of all the crap in it, and all that's in it that's of value is like my bank card and my driver's license. Everything else is just rubbish. And so they were going through the wallet going, "What's all this?" And I was like, it's like old train tickets and stuff. And they were like, "Why are you keeping old train tickets in your wallet?" And I was like, "Oh, well, if I knew the answer to that." And so they were very,
It
very
sounded like you had
unimpressed.
quite a rapport with them, actually.
Well, I just thought if I wanted to paint a picture of I am a pathetic loser who has nothing that you could possibly want. I've just got a bunch of train tickets in my wallet and £5 and this old rubbish phone. They took my keys, and I said, "Please don't take my keys. They're of no use to you. But I need them." And one gentle soul among the rabble said, "Give him his keys back." And,
They're thieves. They're not monsters.
yeah, exactly. And he relented.
How old were they, sorry?
I would say that these unarmed men were maybe about 17, 18, something like that. I mean, they were clearly. I bet they were just on the way home from school. Saw a guy deliberately try and avoid them by walking across the field, and thought, "Let's teach this loser a lesson."
I think you provoked them.
By
ignoring
them.
yeah,
And by apparently talking to them rudely when they grabbed your phone.
while looking for the time. Yeah, I know. So then, I mean, then they left with my wallet minus bank card and my useless phone, and I thought, right, parting shot here. Because in a film you want to say, you'll die now. And
You didn't say
I
you'll die
I
now.
didn't say that, no. But I did say something which I thought was quite risque. And as soon as I said it, I thought, oh, now I'm for it. I said, "You'll regret this one day."
Please tell me it was in that tone.
Yeah, it was in very much a sense of like, not as in because I'm going to kill you, but in a sense of, I bet when you're 30, one of you will probably look back on this and think, "Oh, I really wish I hadn't done that."
Or when they listen to this podcast, they'll feel
Yeah, exactly.
really
When
stupid.
they will feel very guilty. So, sorry to have said that all to you. I know I've just sort of monopolised the first
No.
few minutes of this
No,
podcast,
thank you.
but it just, when something like that happens, and you just kind of have to say it and,
No,
and
I
get it
think-
out.
thank you for sharing.
Thank
as
you
well.
for sharing.
That's all
We
right.
wouldn't-
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks, guys.
How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling fine. Fortunately, so as soon as it was over, I was like, I'm not just gonna mope and sort of scuttle back home. I'm gonna catch him. So I ran as fast as my little legs would carry me to the nearest place that there was, which was a Franco Manca restaurant. And I ran in and I said, "I've just been robbed in the park. I need to use your phone to dial the police." And the guy said, "Okay." And I rang the police. And because a few years ago, my friend had this happen, not in a park, and he'd rung the police, and they turned up within like a minute and said, "Get in the car, we'll drive around and try and find them."
Oh, wow.
And they did, and they got the guy. So I thought this might happen here, because I saw where the guys were going, and I know the area, so I knew where they would have been going. But the
What
police just never turned up, and I ended up having just a pizza there.
What,
Because I had the bank card still.
what time was all this?
This was all early evening. This was all, pre-Watershed,
Well,
I'd say.
you said the
Thank God. I was going to say, what if you were late for the podcast because you were out chasing criminals?
Yeah.
I did go back, and I thought that they may have discovered the abject awfulness of my possessions and thrown them away in the park on their way to safety. So I did go back a couple of hours later to sort of scour the path and see if there was anything, but I don't know.
That'd have been amazing if you'd have come in a police car and it'd have drifted in just in front of the Bill Murray. And then
Yeah.
you'd have rocked
Yeah.
up.
And said, I just apprehended some perps.
Perps.
Perpetrator, that's what they call them.
Sorry, I don't know.
So no. So that's nothing to do with comedy, but that is what happened this evening. So that's how I'm feeling. Yeah. Has anyone here, let's just make this not just about me. Has anyone here been sort of had a similar mishap in London? Yes?
Oh, they put hands up. That's
yeah,
nice.
okay. So it does, not alone. Thanks. It's good to know. Was it similar? Did they, yeah.
I got mugged in Tufnell Park my 21st birthday when I was shit-faced drunk.
Oh, wow, okay. Should I repeat that so you can pick it up on the
Yeah, that'd
microphone?
be
Yeah.
This lady was mugged in Tufnell Park on her 21st birthday when she was shit-faced drunk. And hey, whether you're drunk or not doesn't matter actually. So don't blame yourself. Okay. It's their choice, not yours.
Anyone else like to share?
Yeah.
This guy was sober, and a sobering tale.
How long have you been sober? Oh, nice.
They stole your phone while on bikes.
Was it the classic sort of
Cycle
cycle grab one that they tell you about on the posters? Ah,
An old man stopped me in the street and warned me about that.
did
He said, "Youth, you're going to get pulled up for this." 'Cause I was on my phone.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a classic millennial.
Yes.
I was on my phone, looking down. He was like,
Tinder.
he was
Smiling.
Like, I wasn't on Tinder. He was like, youth.
Youth.
He was like, youth.
Youth,
They're going to get you on their bikes.
quite right.
And I said, thank you.
Thank you.
Quite
I'm
right.
on my way.
And you're still the possessor of a very nice shiny phone.
Thank you.
So there
I bet
go.
you went back on your phone and was straight away afterwards. Though.
I did.
Yeah.
Adam
You
wasn't
didn't learn
listening.
anything.
I didn't
You
learn
didn't learn
it.
anything. Right. Good. How did you get into comedy?
To take revenge on on all the malfeasance of the world. I got into comedy, I suppose, seriously, doing it and thinking that I could do it as a profession at uni. I'd had an interest in doing it since I was a kid, really. The first times that I did comedy were those classic kid things of I'd watch Fawlty Towers or Blackadder, and I found that I was quite good at memorising all the scenes and doing all the voices, and then I would do them to my parents over breakfast, and they found that funny. And that's the first time I can remember enjoying the sensation of making people laugh. And then I did the talent show at my secondary school, and it was classic, impressions of the teachers, impressions of then politicians, William Hague and Tony Blair, and a then unknown Charles Kennedy. And my impression of him was very broad, I have to say. Very, very broad. I think it was basically like, "Hello, I am Scottish."
So it's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, so that was how I sort of began, and I won the talent show, and got this was in year 7, so I was very much who's that kid who does the impression of Tony Blair, and so that was fun for a week, and then so I always had this sense of, oh, Kieran does funny voices and he can sort of do funny things, but it wasn't until I got to uni that I got involved with a sketch group, and that's when I was called upon for the first time to write things and create the material rather than just do Hugh Edwards or whatever it was. And then it went on from there. I assume you have supplementary questions, so I'm going to pause the life story at that point.
No, continue the
No,
life story.
continue the life story. Okay.
I haven't got anything to add.
Great. So I started doing comedy in a sketch group at university, and it was very enjoyable and very encouraging. It was the first thing that I wanted to do when I got to university, because I'd done, I think, AS level theatre studies, and decided that it was
God, that's the worst.
it was a load, because I think 60% of the exam was 60% of the grade was for a written exam, and I thought, what's the point of this? I want to be on stage and doing things. So I gave that up, and I thought, don't worry, when I get to uni, I can do all that as extracurricular stuff. And so Freshers' Fair, I went straight to the sketch group stall, and then auditioned, and they signed me up. And I started doing monologues and just writing really long, awful sketches. And eventually, the guy who was in charge of the sketch group let me do a couple of them. And
they're always so long, aren't they? Those early sketches.
Oh yeah,
so long.
I did the first gig I ever did was coincidentally it was in this huge theatre. I didn't quite realise what I ought to, and I did this, I think, 12 or 13-minute monologue. Wearing an eye patch that was like a last-minute decision, because there was one line, and I was like, "Wouldn't it be hilarious if this character had an eye patch?" So that was great. I won't give a blow-by-blow account of the university years,
Thank
but
you.
the main thing about it was that I was in an environment where we were doing a lot of shows. There was a lot of turnover of material. You were encouraged to write lots of things and to come up with lots of ideas and just try things out in a relatively safe environment where, because students are a fantastic audience, they really want to show you that they get it. And so you can put in all your Charles I jokes and all that sort of stuff, and all your, twatty English lit references, and they'll all go ha 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 ha, and you make mistakes, but you make mistakes in a way where it's never going to be it's never going to threaten your material circumstances too much. And so I always think it's very brave of people who don't have that safe testing ground, who they just go out into comedy clubs with no experience and try it out. I think that's so much harder. I'm very grateful for having had the sandbox to play in for a couple of years.
Were Kieran, the team, Kieran and the Joes, were they in that sketch society? Or
Yes.
Did that start in uni?
So I got involved in sketch comedy at uni with this idea. Does anyone remember those programs? There was a real flush of making programs about 10 years ago that were all about the history of comedy, or about there was one called Comedy Connections, where they were like, here's all the people who were in Father Ted, or here's all the people who were in Big Train. And the thing that I saw in all those stories was that they all met when they were like students, and then they just clung to one another and formed these little groups, and then that made them big. So I thought, what I've got to do is I've got to get to uni and start doing comedy, and then I'll look around and try to spot who's really good, and then sort of clump them with me, and then off we go. And it was very cynical, but it worked, and it's what happened. And so I met three very, very funny people, two of whom were called Joe, and one was called Tom. And Joe and Joe wanted to be on stage, and Tom didn't, so we became a sketch group called Kieran and the Joes. But we had a year, first of all, this is really teased, but we had first of all a year where it was just Kieran and Joe, and then we got the other Joe on board for a couple of years, so for 2 years we were Kieran and the Joes. Then that Joe departed, and so we became Kieran and Joe again for the final iteration, and that was that.
That reminds me of when there was Coke Original, and then there was New Coke. And people liked Coke Original, they went to New Coke, everyone hated it, and they went back to Coke Original, they made way more money.
Yes.
Did that happen?
No, not in any sense.
Right.
I would say the
Made me look a fool.
well, no, that's fine. It's a valid,
I think you did.
it's a valid attempt at an analogy. The prime years were the Kieran and the Joes years, and then there were what TFL would refer to as shoulder periods were the Kieran and Joe singular years. But Tom was there throughout the saga. So, not that you want to know the ins and outs, but when we left the sandbox, when we left the safe space of uni, we started doing Edinburgh shows, because that was the only thing that we knew how to do to launch a career in comedy. We weren't working the northern clubs or going to the Comedy Store or anything. what we understood was, well, if you want to make it in comedy, you just go to Edinburgh year in, year out until you get a BAFTA. And and so that's what we did, and we went on the free fringe because no one else would take us, and we went to a place called the Voodoo Rooms, which that was its first year. In 2009 was when we started Kieran and Joe, and that was its first year as a free fringe venue, and we had no idea what we were going to get, and we found this wonderful space called the Speakeasy in the Voodoo Rooms in Edinburgh. And it's a very intimate venue. You can get about 80 people in there, but there's a really good stage and lighting and stuff, which you don't always get on the free fringe for all its merits. And it was such a fantastic venue that we stayed there, and then I've stayed there as well with a few years in other places. But I've really enjoyed going back there for however many years it is since. So yeah, we did the free fringe. Tom was a great producer and writer, and he got in touch with reviewers, and it was all those the kind of lower strata, it has to be said, of Edinburgh reviewers.
The Fringe Gurus.
Fringe Guru, Remote
Fringe
Goat,
Biscuit, yeah.
Fringe Biscuit.
Flat shit.
This was in the days before the chocolate ocelots pouch, but it was
Oh,
a
God.
similar.
We've
similar
got that
thing.
on our
Fucking
poster.
hell.
Yeah, of course,
fuck
but
that.
these things, they exist for a reason
We'll
to.
fob that one off as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Well, let's come on. This isn't a roast of the chocolate ocelots pouch. It was, you get those reviews because then you use those to attract the next sort of set of people that you want to impress. And through those, we were able to get, Tom was able to invite an agent to come and see us in 2010, our second year, and that agent liked us enough to take us on. And then we thought we were masters of the universe. We thought, well, we've got an agent, so BAFTA's going to come pretty quick. No. We were all sort of fresh out of uni and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we got taken to this huge meeting room at an agency in London. And they said, well, what do you want to do? And we said, we want to be in comedy. We want to be really good at comedy. And they said, okay, yes, sounds good. We usually say 7 years until you sort of start getting properly established. And we were like, we sort of sideways glances at one another going, yeah, but it's us. So, no, they're absolutely right. If anything, that was a generous estimate of our abilities. So yeah, the journey, we thought the journey had ended there, and it really hadn't.
For me, as part of a young comedy company,
Yes.
this is a shocking realization.
Okay.
A terrifying realization.
Up until this point right now, I've been very smug.
Yeah.
Well,
You gotta be the-
I thought we'd made it interviewing you now here.
Yeah.
Are you saying there's more than this?
Hey, man, everyone's different, and
no, this is
I think a big part of it. I think everyone has. If you do sketch group stuff, which a lot of people do, you tend to have your generation of sketch group contemporaries, and there was a whole bunch of us. In that time, there was us and Sheeps and Totally Tom and Delete the Banjacks and Toby and Sad Faces and all these people, lots I'm not mentioning, and Max and Ivan as well. And I think half of the battle is being funny, and the other half, and it is half the battle, is just keeping going and keeping together long enough to get noticed and get a bit of momentum, because so many of that sort of generation of sketch comics, sort of fell out or stopped doing it or lost that momentum or lost the will to live, and didn't act
which
upon
one's
that.
lost the will to live?
Didn't act upon that, but regained it in other ways, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm sure you're very funny, and you seem to get on, and you just make sure that you get on as long as you can, and don't live together. That's a
Oh, we've
Oh,
done
we
that.
did
No, we're
that.
not doing
We're
that
not
again.
doing
yeah.
that again.
Don't.
That was
That
really
is like, because doing comedy and doing comedy together with someone just puts the most extraordinary stress on a friendship, I think. Especially when you're straight out of uni, or you're starting out, and you really. Everything seems huge, and everything seems like we have to make this work. Otherwise, we are in the gutter. We're dead if we don't do well in this year's Edinburgh when we're 23. And you put that pressure on yourself, and you put it on the other people as well. And
So Ian's nodding quite vigorously.
yeah.
What are you nodding about, Ian?
Why are you nodding, Ian?
When you feel like it has to go really well,
that you've like the universe is over.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I get annoyed at you, don't I, Ian?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have some escape, at least domestically from that, it's very bad things can happen.
We've got an interesting situation at the moment because I currently live with Ian.
Oh, okay.
But Ian
Doesn't
It's
say a
not that
great deal.
interesting, yeah.
very sneakily is moving to live with George and no longer wants to live with me.
And didn't tell Adam.
Oh,
and didn't
mama.
tell Adam for a long time.
Yeah.
That's the first I've heard of that. Ian, do you want to ask your first question while you're sort of in the spotlight? Yeah, always.
Yeah, well, always, yeah.
Do the jingle.
Obviously.
It's really, really nice.
There's always such a long pause before the jingle and the question. Okay, good.
Oh, wow. Well done.
Yeah, thanks for rubbing it in that you still got a phone.
Sorry, I think Ian's question cut out. It was what makes you tick.
What makes me tick? I would say mostly guilt. Guilt about not doing the things that I ought to be doing, and then I do them because I feel so guilty about the fact that I haven't done them.
What things?
Just
Don't be a closed book.
I don't know, just a sense of I'm just very anxious all the time. I think about letting people down. People have been very nice to me in my life, starting with my mum and dad onwards, and I always feel a sense of the need to meet those expectations and the nice things that people have said to me, and because I know some people who tick. To use Ian's expression, sort of relentlessly, like they have to create, they have to get something out, or they go mad if they're not working, and they just have to, they wake up in the morning and they have that notebook and they're like, I'm going to create right now. And I'm not like that at all. Like, I am so good at taking a holiday. And I will take a holiday and then I will feel absolutely terrible about it, because I think I've wasted tons of time and I've got to get something done, got to get something down. And to bang on about Edinburgh, one of the great things about it, and the fact that it's so merciless as a schedule of work creation, is that there's no escaping it. Every year you gotta do a new thing. You can't just sit on your laurels for year after year and just kind of I do a sort of 20 minutes that I do here and there. Edinburgh demands a new hour, please. That was all right, but next year, new hour, please. And that's quite scary, and it puts a lot of pressure on you, but it does mean that you do create, and I quite like having that pressure on me, because otherwise I would relax and then feel guilty.
Do you see yourself as a comedian in that sense? Because I've always thought of your shows as sort of bridging somewhere between theatre and comedy. Is that fair to say?
I think
you can say no.
I think that's being nice about the shows. I certainly set out trying to just make them funny, and then they weren't funny enough, so I had to put a story in it so that there was some kind of justification for what I was doing. I've never done stand-up. I've never just come out and said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" Largely because I always thought and you're probably getting this from listening to me tonight, I always thought I was far too boring to do stand-up.
Oh no, we don't think that, do we, guys?
No, but you do. And also, I like stand-up. I think one of the great things about stand-up is that it has, it's the opportunity to hear from other people about their experience, and often from a walk of life that you might not know very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my walk of life, sort of very comfortable, middle-class white male, is, like there's plenty of that going around, and I have nothing really new to add to the national conversation in those terms. So I always wanted to do characters, because I found that they could be funnier than me, Kieran Hodgson. And eventually I found that...
Do you always say that after you say me?
Yeah.
Kieran Hodgson.
Kieran Hodgson, character comedian. On Facebook, not on Twitter anymore. And
That seems like something. Why are you not on Twitter anymore?
scared of the world.
Okay.
And
Sorry,
so
continue what you said.
No, it's fine. So I did just want to do funny characters. That's all I wanted to do. And my first solo show that I did in 2012 was just tons of characters. It was like, here's all the voices I can do. Cast me in your program. And everyone hated it. It was a really bad show.
Which one was that?
It was called Supervillain.
Okay.
Don't worry, you won't have seen it. And it was just tons of different accents, and it was lots of characters that I thought were hilarious, but that just didn't link up or didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so annoyed at how badly I'd done that show that I was determined that I was going to find a way of doing it better. And the way of doing it better that seemed natural to me was to, I think, just simply because one of the reviews said that it was a jumbled, disconnected mishmash. And I was like, no. I'm gonna. Well, you want something connected? Well, just you wait. So I made these things that are stories that are essentially means of hanging characters on them, and they became autobiographical simply because because a friend of mine said that Ben Target said that the comedy that he found best was comedy that had an element of truth in it, that had an element of the performer giving something of themselves, showing something that of themselves that was true to the audience in whatever way they were doing it. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll do all my characters, I'll do my story, it'll just be a story about me and people that I knew. And that's how the format of my last few shows came together.
Has it been a different? You mean you've just said that it kind of spurred you on, that one went badly.
Yeah.
When you got your first sort of notable success, how was that then writing the show after that? Because that's a pressure.
Yeah.
You're saying that because that's exactly what we're doing right now.
Yes.
So
Well, no,
there
that's
is
good.
an agenda.
So,
No,
so
good,
for everyone
I'm
in this
glad,
room
yeah.
who doesn't know about us, just
No,
if
please,
you don't
yeah,
mind.
I've
Kieran.
Who in
banged
this
on-
room doesn't know about us?
I've banged on for so long.
Don't put your hands up. It's fine. We've got it covered. We did our first show. We just finished our sort of first show as a company. It went better than we thought. So we're now starting work on our second show. But our audience they know us for this one thing. So we're now finding we're worried.
They know
what risks
you
to
for
take.
this one thing.
Yeah, they forget Adam.
They've gotten my name wrong. In, genuinely, every single review,
Yeah.
they've gotten my
But
name
that's
wrong.
only because I keep changing the press releases. And right together.
What?
It's funny though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
So I assume that's why you're asking that question. The difficult second album.
Yes.
Right. Well, so I've done 3 of these autobiographical shows that I think are good. And the first one got like no reviews. So loads of people, I say.
Was that French Exchange?
Yeah. A decent number of people saw it and they said, oh, what a great show, Kieran. Shame no one reviewed it, eh? And I was like, yes. So with that one, I thought all I have to do is it's very simple. Take the things that worked and repeat them, but find enough new things that it's a different story. And that ended up in Lance, which did get lots of reviews and did go very well. And so it was more the difficult third album was the show I did last, which was again that thing of okay, what I don't know, what more can I say? It's just find the things that worked, that people enjoyed about it, and that make it your thing. So with me, it was do a story about your own life, have a real sort of emotional journey to it, and try and be imaginative with the way you're telling the story. So in my show, there are little there's songs, or there's little film parodies, there's some impressions, there's little montages, things that I do to try and liven up an hour of me talking. So keep all those, or try and identify what works and replicate, and then you just have to work out what is it that you can add on extra. And between Lance and Maestro, I don't know if anyone saw them who's listening to this.
So Ian's nodding again. What? because
Thanks,
we're
Ian.
not doing that.
I love that
But
Ian's
you were-
like backing me on everything
you-
I'm saying. Is this really?
You were mouthing take note on a podcast.
He must genuinely mean it then. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Right. Sorry, Kieran.
No, so yeah, the main difference between Lance and my show was that I thought, well, instead of doing the story sequentially, I'll just jumble it up a bit, and that'll be a new thing that I'm doing. And instead of telling a story about a hobby, I'll tell a story about my personal life, and that'll be a new thing that I'm doing.
Well, I thought Maestro was particularly, out of the shows I've seen of yours, was particularly. What's the word?
All
What's the
right.
word? Or was particularly all right. That's exactly where I was going.
Particularly off.
Yeah.
It's not quite the right word, but particularly autobiographical.
Yes.
It felt quite personal.
It was, and there was. I have an agent who is very, very good at identifying the essence of her acts, I think, and she was very, very keen, I think, on bringing that personal side to the fore, and that was something I prior to that had been very reticent about. I always wanted to create an imagined world on stage rather than, as I say, my own boring life. And it seemed, however, I eventually came round to her way of thinking, and it seemed a natural evolution of what I was doing to then do a show that was about my romantic life. And I took a deep breath and did it. And it went well. The problem is, though, that I think a lot of really good comedy comes from trauma. Certainly these days, a lot of the most memorable shows that we've seen are from people who've been through very painful experiences. And as I say, I've had a lovely old life, which I'm really grateful for. But it just really hamstrings me when it comes to finding anything to talk about. So the next show, I think I'm just.
Well, you've had the robbery now.
I have had the robbery.
2018.
Kieran Hodgson, privileged man, gets robbed a bit.
It's quite a long. It's quite a long title.
Yeah.
You can just shorten that.
Kieran,
I'd
Kieran
suggest
Hodgson, non-event.
You'll regret this.
Yeah. One day.
Now seems like a good time to have a little break from our podcast to discuss things that we're doing for a change. But do stick around, because Kieran's going to be talking about his sitcom pilot that he recorded for the radio, and also all his work with Nick Mohammed, who is probably best known for Mr. Swallow, which is really interesting, and more about how Kieran thinks about comedy and how he got into it and stuff. But yeah, we're going to the Brighton Fringe with our show, a serious play about World War II.
So if you want to catch us at the Brighton Fringe, come down on the 26th to the 28th of May. We'll be on at the Warren at 4:30 p.m. Have a nice time in the sun on the beach.
Yes, come along to that.
If it is sunny.
It's quite a big venue, so come along and feel that fucker.
Lovely.
And as always, all information about what we're doing can be found at willisandvere.com/serious. That's the website. And we're on Facebook and Twitter at Willis and Vere. Just search it. I mean, it's our names. It's not fucking hard. All right, so back to Kieran Hodgson. Enjoy.
Also, with autobiography, I think you're always, once you start doing it, you get locked into a thing of having to go deeper each time to find new material to talk about, new things to engage the audience with, and as well as having had quite a nice live. There's also a thing of I could then do a show about my family maybe, or that sort of thing, and I'm going to try and draw a line. I don't really want to. I always want to do something. It's one of my rules when I'm writing. Is I always want to do something that I'd be happy for mum and dad to sit in the front row and watch. And so I don't really swear very much. And I just would be really embarrassed to do a show which some people can and I think psychologically often need to do, where they talk about their parents and talk about all that kind of stuff. I just want to leave them alone to sit and watch me, because they're very supportive.
And I think if you do something about your parents and family in comedy, you've got to mug them off a bit. There's got to be something there. There's got to be, like you say, there's got to be some trauma. Somewhere.
Yeah, or the trauma, or even just what a weirdo my dad is, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Your dad's quite funny, isn't he?
No.
All right.
He works.
I've always thought
he
quite
works
funny.
hard, and he's a lovely family man.
All right. We'll leave that.
so I've mentioned them once or twice very affectionately.
Yeah.
But affectionate mentions of your parents ain't gonna bring the house down, I don't
No.
think. So I've run out of autobiography. I don't want to talk about any other aspects of my life. So the next show is going to be very interesting.
Imagine if we ended the interview there. I don't want to talk about any other aspects.
I don't
of my
know.
life.
There's nothing. I mean, I've sort of talked about growing up and learning how to become an adult, and I've talked about falling in love and I've fallen in love now, so that's
Boring.
done. I can't do a show about my horrific breakup because I don't want one.
And because everyone's that's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
That's been done. That's the
Yeah. The starting point for everyone, isn't it?
We'll see. I maybe when I'm 50, I will start doing autobiographical things again. But I haven't lived enough. Is the truth of it.
Ian, do you know? I think it's that time, isn't it? Yeah.
So your show Maestro is about writing or attempting to write a symphony. So do you see a funny side to classical music?
This is a threat from Ian, I think.
Are you obviously you're playing some light jazz for us this evening, Ian? But are you a classical musician by heart?
Both really, jazz, classical.
Whatever you need him for, basically.
What?
What do you want him to do? Go on.
What's
He'll do it.
Could you play us out later with your favourite Beethoven piano sonata?
Yeah.
Great. Very excited to see which one he chooses.
We only get the best.
No, that is yeah. No one else could match that offer, I don't think. Do I see a funny side to classical music? Yes, I do. I suppose, in a more universal sense, I find. God, what a lame comment to make. I find all things funny. I find anything that has a sense of grandeur and a sense of importance quite funny, because we're all just dust in the end, aren't we? That's very much.
Ian's nodding again.
Yeah.
Ian is dust.
But one thing that was funny about doing a show about classical music was the fact that I take it very seriously. I think it's really important. I think it's something that's very close to my heart, and I think that everyone else should listen to. And so it was quite hard then to think of things of like, isn't the conductor waving his arms a bit silly? I was like, no, he does a very important job. So the angle I tried to go for was, what's funny about classical music is the attitude to it, is how seriously people take it. Because classical music comedy is quite a well done little subgenre. People like Bill Bailey and I think Tim Minchin. I haven't seen what Tim Minchin's up, but I think he does orchestral stuff. And then going back, you have Anna Russell and Victor Borger and people like that who did classical music, funny classical music, or finding the funny bits in Wagner, all that sort of stuff. So I didn't want to just be doing that. So I thought, what's funny is the pretension of a hopeless amateur like myself trying to reach these dizzy heights of supreme artistic creation. And so that's what I went for. So again, when we bring it back to me, I thought that could be funny. Someone whose musical abilities were not very good, thinking that he was a great genius.
I
was just looking at Ian for that, sorry, but yeah, go on.
Oh no. What was going on?
No, I was just...
Clearly, it was more important than my
Also,
question.
ability is very good. That's you don't say I have good abilities, but there we go. So I was just correcting myself. My dad's an English teacher, so I need to make sure that he knows that I know that I made an error there.
We're all very conscious of our fathers and making sure that they approve of the broadcast. I hope my dad knows. Again, I think he's a lovely, hard-working family man.
Oh, it's all so respectful now, isn't it? Comedy lost its edge completely.
Yeah, that's true. It's horrible, isn't it?
I hope you get someone edgy on next week. I feel that I've been very placid as guests go.
We'll get John Robinson back. He was a nutter.
Yeah.
Ian, no, I was going to talk about. I was going to ask you a bit about Sweats.
Oh, wow,
It was
okay.
A cool premise with an excellent cast.
Yes.
Do you want to explain the premise of Sweats?
Sweats was a pilot for a radio sitcom that was recorded and broadcast towards the beginning of this year, so back in January. But we recorded it around this time last year, so November-ish 2016. And the concept of it was that it was a sitcom set in a gym, but a micro gym, which is basically a converted charity shop. And it was 2 rooms, and it was a brother and sister who ran it, and it was all a bit hopeless, and it was all in Worthing. Not that Worthing is a bad place, but my sister lives there. It's great, but the idea was that it had these pretensions of being big global fitness giant, but it was just a very 2-bit operation. So that was the concept of the sitcom. And your other question about it?
You're making faces if you're going to talk.
Yeah. Oh, you said tell us. You said I think the question was tell us about, and I wanted to know if there were any subcategories of tell us about.
So the pilot was released in January.
Yes.
What's happening now?
The pilot was listened to by the people who listen to pilots, and they said no more, please.
They're annoying.
So that's the end of that, I'm afraid. But I did do another radio program that had a whole series, and that was all about classical music. So, so that's okay. It's all right. It just came across really petty, didn't it? It's like, well, there was one thing that didn't work, but there was one that did actually. Saying, yes, I'm very glad that you listened to Sweats. It was really fun, and radio is really great to work in because. Like for telly, if you want anyone really good for telly, they're like, well, I want a lot of money and it's going to be a lot of time, so probably not. But radio will take like a day, and you can give someone a few £100 for the day, so you can often get really, really good people. And so when we were trying to cast it, I just said to the producer, there was one character, and I said, well, it'd be great to have Alison Steadman for that. And she was like, okay, yeah, Alison Steadman, yeah. And she wrote it down, Alison Steadman popped in and did it, which was really stupid because it was the stupidest part that I think I've ever written. The character was called Aunt Lois, and the whole joke of the character was that she just loved being an aunt, and all she ever talked about was the fact that she was an aunt. And so every line that she said had the word aunt in it, and she was just constantly reminding of people that she was an aunt. So it'd be like, oh, that'll be £5.80, please. And she said, well, that's very expensive for an aunt like me. That kind of thing. So it was just a stupid joke. And she was like, yeah, I'll give that a go. And so she came in and did it. So that was a bit of wish fulfillment, I have to say. And if it's appeared on her CV, I'd be very surprised.
Oh, we'll have to check. We definitely have to check.
We'll have a look.
We'll
put it at the end
as Aunt Lois. The best bit was she had a big sort of scene at the end where I was like, now you're gonna hate me or something like that, or now I don't think you'll ever love me, or I don't think you'll ever be impressed by me ever again, Aunt Lois. And she says, oh, aren't I? So again, just absolute no. Much better response than it got at the recording. So yeah, it was full of very silly things. But that was something that came from a collaboration with Tom, who was one of the Kieran and the Joes engine. But as with so many of these things, it had a chance, but not much of one. It turned out.
And Nick Mohammed was in that as well, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
You've worked with him quite a lot.
I have, yeah. Nick's a fantastic guy. Down here, no Nick Mohammed?
You're a terrible comedy audience.
They're a lovely comedy audience. I have to say, you're all listening really politely, and I hope that's because what I'm saying is interesting and not because you're sort of bored to tears and you're just like being quiet because it's like, oh.
Are you being very attentive or are you bored to tears?
So you may have noticed attentive.
In one voice. As if we're holding up cards. Attentive.
It's just, I'm sorry, I'm just very insecure. So I needed that bit of reassurance. Thank you. Phew, yeah, woo! Build me up. Attentive. So anyway, well, given that you don't know who he is, Nick Mohammed is a very, very talented and very busy character comedian. And when I was starting out doing uni stuff in 2008, he was the cool character comedian that you all had to go and see. You all saw him, and I was very much like, that's the kind of guy I want to be. And a couple of years ago, he used to do solo shows, but then a few years ago he decided that he wanted to up his game, and instead of doing a one-man character show, he was going to do a whole musical in an hour in an Edinburgh Fringe venue. And so he got a band and a cast, and they put out the casting for it, and I decided to give it a go. And I got cast in it. So all of a sudden, this person who I'd occasionally gigged with, I just ended up in far closer contact with him. Excuse me, I just burped. And
I don't think we picked that up. You could have got away with that.
Hoisted by my own honesty. And so we did that, which was a musical of a comedy musical of Dracula. And then a couple of years ago, last year, we did a comedy musical of Houdini. And Nick is, as well as being a very talented and very stupid comedian, he stupid in the sense of like his characters.
Don't worry,
like,
we'll edit that.
No,
gossip going.
The thing that's so great about Nick is that he's fiendishly clever and uses all his cleverness and all his talent to do very stupid things on stage, which is really nice and very, very enjoyable when you're trying to be on stage, and you're always the straight man in what Nick does, because Nick has this character called Mr. Swallow, and Mr. Swallow's raison d'etre is to sort of shriek and irritate people, and so playing opposite that and trying to keep a straight face is often very, very difficult. But Nick is a great magician, and as a teenager he loved doing magic. So when he did this Houdini show, he really wanted the magic to be as impressive and as memorable as the comedy. So the whole show climaxed with him recreating one of Houdini's most famous escapes, where he's padlocked and chained in a tank of water and has to escape from it. And that was just something I'd never imagined that I would be involved doing. And when the rehearsal, the first day when we're doing the rehearsals, and these magicians came down from Newcastle with the special box that they had for being locked in a tank of water, and we filled it up, and we all stood around, and he had to stay in it for a certain amount of time for when we were doing the show, so we had a stopwatch there, and down he went, and we put the lid down and put the padlocks on and started the clock, and it was just absolutely terrifying, and but he did it every single day.
Sounds fun though. I like the idea of Ian doing some sort of thing like that at the end of each one of our podcasts. Do you like the idea of that, Ian?
Or like a ribbon routine or something.
Oh, something, yeah.
But it's all part of a trend that a few people I think have identified, that the Fringe has become a bit of an arms race in terms of what is expected of shows there.
Mm-hmm.
That the relentlessness of having to do a show every year means that I think there's a sense of, well, what's the next amazing thing that's going to come out? For every show that is person with microphone for an hour, there are people like Joseph Morpurgo's show a couple of years ago, where he went through the whole archive of Desert Island Discs and sampled it and cut it up so that the show was him having a conversation with Kirsty Young on his own episode of Desert Island Discs. Like thousands of hours of work to do that for a comedy show, and it was extraordinary. And then you have Nick locking himself in a tank of water live on stage every night, that sort of thing. So and my whole in the last show I did of having this orchestral recording of a symphony I'd written. And it's a bit scary when you think, oh heavens above, what am I going to do next? Like to sort of in an hour in a tiny venue in Edinburgh.
Full disclosure.
Yes.
We've been talking about trying to get a live chimpanzee for a later show.
Yeah.
I rang an animal actors agency.
Yeah.
I
That must
left him a
be
message.
so expensive.
I left him a message inquiring about how a person goes about purchasing a chimpanzee. Or like
renting.
Yes, hiring their services. Yes.
He never returned my phone call.
All I would say is that would be so expensive.
I can only assume that
exciting,
I can only assume he
Yeah.
didn't look our theatre company up. Otherwise, obviously, he'd be
He'd be
straight
like,
back on.
"Phew, these
Pushing the
guys."
chimp out the door. Yeah.
A friend of mine made a short film about a guy who loved birds, and it was a 2-day shoot, and over half the budget went on a couple of hours of them getting a guy who could train a sparrow to land on your hand. So anything with animals, like, say goodbye to all your money.
Yeah.
I hear a fox is pretty pricey as well. Like,
How do you know that?
like $4 grand.
Yeah.
I know people. I know people that do that sort of thing.
So what's okay? Where are you from again?
I don't want to say. I can't think of an adequate fox joke.
Okay, I don't like where this has gone. Ian, do you want to ask your last question?
Thanks, Ian.
Where would you be right now if your comedy career hadn't taken off like it did?
I mean, arguably,
Specifically.
it hasn't that much. But
Because you're here with us talking.
I'm here with- no, don't twist my words. I was trying to be lovably self-deprecating, and instead you've made me look like a fiend.
But we'll regret it.
Where would I? Yeah. Where would I be? The closest, because I was really fortunate in that as soon as I came out of uni, I got this agent, and that seemed like the powers that be going, give it a go. You're okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the closest that I came to seriously getting other jobs was I applied. I always wanted to be a train driver, and most people grow out of that around the age of 7. But this persisted with me, and so I thought, well, comedy might go okay, but I'll just get the wheels in motion, pardon the expression, on a train driving career as well. So I went on the first Capital Connect recruitment website, and I filled in their online quiz to be a revenue protection officer at Hornsey Station. And with my very good degree from quite a good university, it didn't matter at all, because the first step that you have to do is fill in a questionnaire. And the questionnaire is designed in a really, I'm probably going to misuse this adjective, but Kafkaesque manner, because it's like a customer comes up to you and they do not have enough money for their ticket. Do you A, provide excellent customer service, B, make sure that the customer's needs are being catered for, or C, provide an excellent customer service experience for the customer? And oh my god, B, and then so you fill in all these questions, trying to work out what they want to hear, and then at the end of it, based on your answers, they allot points, and if you make it above a certain threshold, you can go through to the stage where you actually submit a CV. But I didn't make it above the threshold. So I fell at the first automated hurdle of working for First Capital Connect.
Out of interest, did you ensure that the customer had great customer service? Or
Yeah, what did you pick?
Fob them off out the gates?
I think I would have wanted them to have a 5-star customer service experience. But in the end, First Capital Connect went the way of All Flesh. They lost the franchise to Go Via, who now run it under Great Northern, so it's the joke's on them ultimately.
Indeed.
So I could have been a train driver. I could also have worked for an internet wine merchant. That was the only other job that I applied for. But they said I went in on Friday for a sort of interview thing and walked around the warehouse, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah, got a few questions. Yeah, and we asked questions, and they seemed really happy, and they said, great, we'll give you a call on Monday to let you start, and they never did. So I would have been a train driver or a wine merchant is the answer. So essentially nothing.
Well,
not
That's
to say that
insulting to
no,
wine
but
merchants everywhere.
No, but what I'm saying is that I would have been a very poor version of those.
yes.
And so I think it's as Spock says to Kirk in Star Trek 2, being a starship captain is your first best destiny, and I feel that being a character comedian in North London is my
Your
first
first
best destiny.
That seems like a lovely place to wrap this up. Can we just before you go, we wanted to give you a little present. It's a little card from me and Adam, and it's a picture of you, which sounds creepy. It's a picture of you from 5 years ago with Ian on stage in your show.
Oh, when I had sideburns. Oh, that's.
I wasn't there, but I signed the card.
And that's actually,
Can you,
guys,
can you
it's
show the
actually in on a proper Fujifilm print. So this is Joe. This is one of the Joes. This is sideburn time, this was our last show that we did. It was called Friends of Steel, and it was a good show.
And there's Ian as well for some reason.
And there's Ian. Ian would have been. So this would have been near the start of the show. We did a lot of audience interaction stuff, which I now no longer do. And this was a bit where we staged an intervention for a member of the audience. Ian would have he'd have been sitting down, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to enjoy a nice hour of light-hearted sketch comedy," and then he was straight in there. In the hot seat. So thank you very much. I'm sure you were a good sport. Better than on the day when the whole front row was Scouts, which took us aback when we came out onto the stage. And we had to, they were very rowdy and awful. Which is a shame because I was a Scout for 13 years and my conduct was exemplary.
Right, Ian, are you ready to play out to the Beethoven? Yeah?
Ooh. I probably won't know what it is because I'm an ignoramus.
Right. So this will be rubbish for two reasons. Number one,
Hi.
I'm not very good. Number two, this keyboard's not very good. Let's do it anyway.
Yeah, let's do it anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, Kieran Hodgson.
What a lovely end. What a lovely, amicable end.
What's a lovely end?
The show. The lovely end of the show.
I thought you were looking at Ian.
I'm
No.
an end, apparently.
Bell end.
Ah, yeah.
I can see why you got confused.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like to see more of Kieran's work, you can find him on Twitter at Kieran C. Hodgson. Or
I feel like we've tainted it a bit now, the podcast.
What do you mean?
We're all talking about bell ends and stuff. We had a quite sophisticated podcast, I thought, and it was quite interesting.
It's your fault.
We were talking about, we end with some
that's-
classical music, and now
Yeah, but that's what I
Adam,
was trying
you
to-
start talking about bell ends.
No, I didn't. I didn't start
Dickhead.
talking about bell ends.
No,
I
think you did.
was trying to give Kieran's like social media links and stuff.
Well, you look like a bell end, and it put me off.
Okay, well that fair, I can't change that, can I?
You could stop shaving your head.
Right. Anyway, enough of this raucous behaviour. You can find Kieran on at Kieran C. Hodgson at
You having a stroke?
maybe.
Right.
You can find him on Twitter, the name I said earlier, or you can find him on Facebook at Kieran Hodgson Character Comedian. So do that.
Yeah, do
Please.
that. And yeah, do go and see him live because I mean we spoke about it in the podcast, but it's just there's proper shows, they're proper
incredible.
theatre shows. And the most recent one, Maestro, it was really interesting. It takes that sort of work that can often be quite irritating when someone's just talking about their life for an hour and does something really nice with it. So, so please do go and see him.
Just similar to just three guys talking about bell ends.
Oh god, yeah,
Can we
boring.
stop talking about Bellends,
Award
please?
winning. All right, so next week we have not got John Robertson. We have got Muriel. They're a sketch comedy group. They're very funny. So tune into that. And John Robertson will be a few weeks later. But
You
yeah,
can
we're getting all
wait.
the Bill Murray ones out the way first because they're a little bit more current.
Current.
Oh, I'm hungry.
Current bun.
Black currant.
Right, on that note, I'm going to have to go. See you next week.
He's running for some black currants.